Hey guys, this is Justin at The Survivor Review, and today we'll be talking about Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween. The sequel to the surprisingly fun 2015 movie that of course was inspired by the classic R.L. Stine books. And I did do a review of that first movie back when it came out, and I mentioned in there too that I have a lot of nostalgia for the Goosebumps books. I love them. They were a huge part of my childhood. I remember trying to write my own Goosebumps books. These really helped get me into writing and into the horror genre. I still have all 62, I think it is, original books in the original versions with the old cover art, because those are the best. Those are the only ways to own these books, at least in my opinion. So I love Goosebumps. A lot of nostalgia for it, and that's kind of how I went into the first movie. I wasn't really excited for it or really that interested in it, but I was like, you know what, this should be fun, and it's Goosebumps, I want to check it out at least. And I was surprised that I had a good time with it. It was a really enjoyable movie. Like I always say about it, is that it's a really good kids movie that is mostly meant for kids. It doesn't really go that extra mile that, say, a Pixar movie would do to make it a great movie that both kids and adults can enjoy. It is aimed at kids, but it's not dumbed down or offensively stupid, and it's still a really fun, creative movie that adults can enjoy it too for what it is. And when it comes to the sequel, I feel it's kind of more of the same, in my opinion, although I feel it's lesser. I really think the sequel is a step back from the first one. There's definitely some fun, enjoyable elements in it, but I just didn't think it quite worked it well. It kind of felt like a rushed, kind of thrown together sequel. It really feels like the kind of sequel that would have been made a year after the first one came out. Oh man, Goosebumps made a lot of money, let's just rush out a sequel next year, and this is what you would get. There's still, like I said, still some fun elements in there, some, entertaining bits, but overall it's just not as good as the first one. So the plot of this movie, it centers around a whole new cast. You got Ben from It, and his best friend, and Ben's older sister. And one day while Ben and his friend are cleaning out this old, decrepit, rundown house, they come across Slappy the Dummy. And of course they read, the magic words and bring him to life. And Slappy, being the maniacal dummy he is, he brings all these monsters to life, and in turn ends up bringing everything that's Halloween related to life into one crazy night, and they have to find a way to defeat him. What's really weird about this movie is that the first one had this big scale. They open up the books, they unleash all the monsters from his books, and it's chaos. But this one has that in the ending. The first act of this movie is actually just a straightforward adaptation of Night of the Living Dummy. That's really what it is. They unleash Slappy, then Slappy goes around, hurting people, and it's it's very small scale. And it just seems weird doing that as a follow-up to the first movie. They had this, crazy, zany plot, and then the first half of the sequel was just oh, there's a dummy on the loose. It's oh, okay, it's kind of scaled back a bit. But I do appreciate it a little bit. A lot of times it did feel like an episode of the TV show, for better or for worse, however you want to interpret that. It did feel like an episode of the TV show, especially the scene where they find the dummy inside the rundown house. That's a sequence I could easily imagine in an episode of the show, so I thought that was kind of fun. But when you get to the last half, when Slappy unleashes everything and brings everything Halloween related to life, I thought that was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of good Halloween atmosphere. That's the best thing about this movie, is that it is a really good movie to watch around this time. It's the kind of movie I would love to watch with my niece, because I feel this one she would really enjoy and really would get her into the Halloween spirits. This is that kind of movie. And the ending just oozes Halloween. It takes place in this one town where everybody loves Halloween. I wish I lived in this town, because every house has all these elaborate decorations. It's nuts, and I'm man, I wish I lived there. Where I live, literally 2 houses decorate, and even then it's not that elaborate of decorations. It's just a couple lights and a little hanging, ghosts. And I wish I lived there, because those people know how to do Halloween. But I think what also takes away from the movie a little bit is the fact that when you get to the ending and he turns every Halloween thing alive, it doesn't take a lot from the books. And the first movie you had all those monsters the abominable snowman, the werewolf and all that stuff. But when you get to this one, it just feels like a lot of generic Halloween imagery. And that's the thing, they brought back the abominable snowman and the werewolf from the last movie, and the effects are clearly a lot more polished and look a lot better. The snowman effects and the wolf, especially the werewolf one in the first movie, were kind of dodgy and kind of they look pretty cheap. Well, in this one they look really good, but they're just glorified cameos. They just kind of are there. They literally don't do anything in the actual movie. And speaking of glorified cameos, Jack Black is in this movie as R.L. Stine, and it is basically an extended cameo. It's probably one of the strangest, like, extended cameos that I've seen in a movie, mostly because it leads to nothing. And that's kind of the joke in the end, and I guess it's kind of a funny little joke that he basically comes in to save the day after the fact, and it doesn't really do anything. But it really just, like, I don't know, it just feels like if that's what they're leading to, why even do it? Like, why even put him in this movie if he's just gonna pop in and be like, oh, I'm late, okay, and then that's it, you know? Why not just, like, don't do that, but just give him one big, important, like, epic scene that's really good, instead of just having him appear sporadically throughout to make it feel like he's in the movie more than he really is, only to have him pop up and be like, oh, well, I'm not here, oh, here's a little bit of lessons, okay, bye. You know, it was really strange. But that being said, it was still nice to see him. Because I really like Jack Black as R.L. Stine. I think he's just a really fun character, and you can tell Jack Black is just having a lot of fun with it.
Are you R.L. Stine?
No, I'm Dr. Seuss. R.L. Stine was unavailable. Yes, of course I'm R.L. Stine.
And so, like, when you see him in the movie, like, I like his character more than any of the actual characters in this movie, which is also why it's kind of disappointing. But I was happy to see him back in at least some capacity. Like, it's better than just, like, not having him at all. Because I remember, like, when the trailers came out and he wasn't in them, and I'm like, oh, really? They're just not going to have Jack Black? Like, this Goosebumps movie series is about, like, the author R.L. Stine in the real world. So it seemed really weird to not have him in it. So I'm glad they put him in there, at least in some capacity. I wish he would have had more of a role, wish he would have had more to do, and it was just a really kind of weird extended cameo that led to nothing. But it was nice to see him, I guess. It's kind of a double-edged sword in a way, you know? It's nice to see him, but it was kind of unnecessary at the same time. And then we get to Slappy as a character, who unfortunately is not voiced by Jack Black this time, but the new voice does a pretty good job. But, like, when the first half that focuses on Slappy, like, I don't remember the books too well. It's probably been like a decade or more since I've read them, you know? But I don't remember him having these, like, telekinetic powers. Like, of course there's stuff in the book where he would just, like, appear out of nowhere, just move stuff out of nowhere, but they kind of overplay that ability literally as telekinetic powers. It just seemed kind of like a weird add-on, at least for this movie, especially because you don't see him do any of that in the first one. He doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. Could be from the books, and, you know, there could be Goosebumps periods out there that's like, no, that's exactly how he is in the books. But even my girlfriend, who I saw the movie with, who loves Goosebumps, even she was like, yeah, he can kind of do that stuff in the books, but it seemed like it was kind of stretched a little far in this one. She said, like, oh, they kind of went a little too far in this movie with it. And there's a random subplot in the movie with the main character's sister, who basically finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her. And man, when that scene happened, the only thing that was going through my mind was just like, yeah, Goosebumps. That's what I think when I think Goosebumps. It was just so random and unnecessary, and then it doesn't even have much payoff. Like, Slappy overhears her complaining about him, so he goes and confronts the boyfriend at the school while he's, like, on the ladder putting some stuff up, and he makes, like, the ladder break and the guy fall and get seriously injured, and then you see the guy being carried away to an ambulance, and that's it. Like, no scene where, like, the sister, like, confronts him, you know, tells him off or anything. None of that. He just gets carried away in an ambulance, and that's all you see of him for the rest of the movie. It's never mentioned again for the entirety of the movie. You never see him again. It's just, that's it, that's done. There was just no point for that being in the movie at all. This is kind of a hard movie to really critique because it is a kid's movie. It's meant for children, you know? So, like, any real criticisms I have aren't really going to matter because kids aren't going to care about that. And also, it's not like an offensively bad kids movie. It's a really good movie to show to kids. I just thought, in comparison to the first one, it was a much weaker movie, much cheaper movie, obviously thrown together just to kind of make money off of the Goosebumps property. You know, there's not as much care put into it as the first one was. Like, the first one really just kind of relished in, like, the Goosebumps books and all that stuff. Like, it just loved it and adored it. This one, you have, like, Ken Jeong, like, name-dropping Goosebumps books. And it's like, okay, like, it doesn't seem to be like that effort or that spark that the first one had. This one just feels very by the numbers. Like, this one's only 90 minutes, so that tells you right away. Definitely small scale compared to the first one, which was this big, like, sprawling, fun movie. This one, the first half is a very small scale Night of the Living Dummy adaptation, and the last half gets big and wild. But it has some good enough Halloween imagery in there, except it really relishes the holiday of Halloween, which is great. It's like the best thing you could ask for this movie. And even though, like I said, it doesn't really utilize the books too much, which is kind of like a detriment to it, it's still nice to see these characters come to life, like seeing Slappy the Dummy. Still fun. You know, I guess if you like Goosebumps and you have a younger sibling, there you go. You take them to see this movie, and you have a fun time, especially around this season. This is a great movie to watch around this season with a kid because of how much it loves the holiday of Halloween. It is what it is, and that's kind of a bummer when you have the first movie that felt like it elevated itself a little bit from what it could have been. This is easily what I expected the first movie to be, you know? And it is kind of a bummer when the first movie kind of like moved past that, when the sequel is just kind of like, yeah, disposable, you know, kids movie. Like I said, though, it's just kind of a step down from the first one, which is kind of a bummer, but then again, you know, neither of these movies are really, like, amazing entertainments. You know, they are what they are, and it's just fun little scary kids movies. So yeah, that's Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween. Like I said, kind of a little bit disappointed, but overall, it's okay. That's really it. And yeah, that's about it for now. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.